Welcome to the daily Cambridge NetBank COPpuccino. For today's first dose of Durban diagnosis and we hope prescription, I'm joined by Conservation International President and Head Peter Seligmann. What's the most interesting thing you're hearing?
I think that what we're seeing is the the emergence of a multi-pronged approach that the private sector is not willing to wait for the government process to complete.
But do you honestly think they're doing enough? Because some of what I'm hearing is that there's a sense of self-congratulatoriness about some of the conversation, a sort of smugness. We're doing actually quite a lot. Do you really believe that?
I think that anybody that steps up on their own to do anything is making an important step forward. And look, I started working in this field with businesses 25 years ago. The difference between then and now is enormous. I think that the shift from engagement being a CSR involvement to this is our corporate DNA, it's our identity, our brand, is huge. And I think that more and more companies are understanding that their future depends upon how they take care of nature, and climate change impacts that, ecosystems impact.
When you look back over that 25 years, and if someone was to say, well, what's the biggest success story of a company you've worked with or a corporate leader you've worked, who would you cite?
I think that one of the really transformational leaders in this field is Yvon Chouinard from Patagonia. We worked with him when we started CI to put buttons that were made from tagua, from a fruit of a palm tree, on their shirts and on their clothes. It was an initial great success. Unfortunately, the buttons exploded when they went into the drying machine, so it didn't last too long, but he still maintained the faith. I would say another one is Howard Schultz, who ran Starbucks, and I was really impressed with their understanding that their demographic was interested, and that's the way it began, but it emerged into a recognition that their supply of coffee had to come from the shade of a forest, number one, and number two, they had to ensure that the threat of climate change didn't undercut the ability to get that supply, so they became deeply involved. Simon Sussman, who's going to be here later on.
Next guest, yes.
Great leader, phenomenal vision, and he's gotten a company to really think about its entire DNA. I'm super impressed with a man by the name of Rob Walton, who's the chairman of Walmart, who really challenged his company to think green, and that opened up kind of an extraordinary engagement within that company to shape its supply chain that way.
What was the leadership he showed in that particular case?
He actually approached me. He called me up one day and he said, I'm interested in what you're doing. Can I learn about it? I said, sure. What would you like to do? He said, I'd like to come visit. We were in the middle of our planning session. He arrived one day with a notebook and spent 3 days listening to CI staff from around the world have conversations about what does it take to protect biodiversity. He sat through every meeting, took notes, asked questions, left, came back, said, this is really what I want to get involved in this from my personal perspective, not business. But first of all, any company, no matter how big it is vulnerable to what the public thinks. And we used to think that they were impenetrable. They're not. They're really listening. And so social network, protests, challenges are heard and are felt. And I think that you cannot let down the guard with any major institution. You got to push on them and push on them and push them, and they will be receptive. You cannot be not receptive. You're going to be perceived today either as a partner of your company, a partner, or a predator. You don't want to be the predator. I think that what a Walmart can do, or a Unilever can do, or a Woolworths can do, or any of these major corporations can do, is that if they run their business right, they can be a market for people that produce goods in a sustainable way. And that's what they need to do. And so Walmart has made a commitment in China to buy from 1 million smallholder farmers in China. They're going to make the same commitment in Africa. Large-scale engagement.
Next few days, what are you hoping will emerge from COP17?
What I expect will happen, which will be an important step forward, is agreements on REDD, agreements on adaptation, a commitment to a climate fund. I would love to see the United States and China and India and all the other countries sign an agreement and put $100 billion a year into protecting the climate, and start seeing groups of 6, 5, 7 nations coming together and setting up really functional networks, almost trading blocks, to work on red and on other issues. And I think that that's where we're headed. We're headed towards that kind of engagement.
Well, Peter Seligmann, thank you for joining me on the Daily COPpuccino, sponsored by Cambridge Nedbank. Thank you very much.
Thank you.